All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. As we let everyone trickle in and get joined, I'm going to run through a quick few housekeeping items. So my name's Kayla. I'm here representing the Acelab team, and we have Scott, Ross, and Garrett here from QuikWall, who are going to be guiding us through the presentation. But before we do that, let's take a quick look at Acelab. I'm pulling it up right now. Should be able to see my screen in just a moment. All right, so here, as it's pulling up, you should be able to see it now. Anytime you're logged into your Acelab account and you're looking to do some research or looking for a specific manufacturer, you can do a various number of things, but we would recommend using the search bar at the very top of your screen. In this case, it'll take you over to QuikWall's page. Got some basic information for you, some contact information, a few highlights, as well as their products here for you to explore. So you can click into any one of these products that you'll learn about today, and you can learn a little bit more about it, and then you can also save it to your firm library right here. So that way you'll have it for future reference and future projects if you'd like. So I'll drop the link for this page in the chat. That way you can check it out and explore some more on your own. But a couple other things to make note of. We will be doing Q&A towards the end of the presentation, but if at any point you have a question that comes up, you can drop it in the Q&A box and we will get to that towards the end. We will also be doing a poll during the webinar, so you'll see that pop up about 3/4 of the way through the presentation. If you're interested in getting more information from the QuikWall team and to be connected directly with them, you can fill out that poll and we will send you an email connecting you with them. However, if you're not interested in any follow-up information, just click the X on that little box that pops up and you'll be good to go. We will also be doing a post-webinar survey, so you'll see that come up after the webinar ends. We appreciate any feedback that you have. So that is everything from my end. I will go ahead and pass it over to Scott.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for investing in learning about movable wall systems, particularly glass partitions, interior glass walls. My name is Scott Staedter. I'm the VP of Strategy. And here with me is Garrett Easton, who is our VP of Business Development, and Ross McDonald, who's our West Coast Regional Sales Manager. Together, combined, we have just under 100 years of experience in operable partitions and movable walls. And so I think we can probably answer any question that you might have kind of across the board in general about these types of movable wall systems. All right, just a quick note on what QuikWall does and what we offer: operable partitions, operable walls. We have a whole line of glass partition systems. We have accordion doors, and we also provide overhead structural support through our Unispan and QuickSpan product lines, that if you have a project that you need support on, we can provide those that as a full complete package. All right. QuikWall at a glance. We are one of two movable wall companies in the United States that is U.S. owned. We're privately held since 1961, so we have been around for quite a long time. We have 3 U.S.-based manufacturing facilities and currently building a new plant in Clinton, Illinois, in about a 260,000 square foot facility, and glad to be getting to a bigger location. Industry best operable wall STCs, or sound transmissions class, at 56. We're best in class interior movable wall line. We have the most interior movable walls than anybody in the marketplace has to offer, and a lot of different types of systems, and some pretty cutting edge stuff that we've got right now. Global distribution and a service network. We have industry best warranties. And we're consistent lead times best. It's why we have multiple manufacturing facilities in the United States. And we nearly have nearly an unlimited number of product finishes. So designers, it's nice if you want to work with us to develop anything that you have in mind. We can always take a shot at it. Okay. Today it's interior movable walls. That's what we're going to talk about. We're optimizing aesthetics with flexibility, daylighting, and acoustical performance. And we'll get into all of those individual elements today. Our learning objectives, even though this isn't a formal CES, I want to make sure that you all understand what we're trying to get there. We're going to understand applications and product selection differences between movable interior glass and exterior walls. We're going to review the importance of acoustic performance and how overhead structure, floor support, glass type, surrounding seal affect the performance. We'll learn how movable walls optimize sustainable building design, including materials, indoor air quality, and daylighting. And we will review how movable glass partitions add to the human experience within a built environment. And so, let's get on with the show. So let's understand some of these applications and product selection differences between a movable interior glass and exterior glass. Well, again, what's the difference? Well, one's designed for exterior openings, right? And one is designed for interior openings. And there's been a lot over the last 30 years of support for the type of exterior glass walls kind of coming into the interior space and seeing that the interior or the exterior glass walls are kind of driven the market. A lot of things get crossed over from a specification perspective and get pulled into interior glass walls that have nothing to do with an interior glass wall. And so I'm going to go through kind of those key characteristics that are in an exterior wall that may or may not be necessary for an interior wall. So an exterior wall, your key performance criteria, one is water infiltration and draining. You make sure the water weeps out, right? So the exterior wall there has to make sure that you don't get any water in the facility, and you got to figure out how to get the drainage out of those facilities. And that's a very key component. The other one's air infiltration. There's different codes based on residential or versus commercial that you have to achieve. You have to have structural wind loading as well, right? So when you're talking about an exterior wall, you got to make sure that that thing can stand the forces against the building. You've got to worry about thermal transmission and impact resistance, particularly in hurricane zones. And those hurricane zones keep growing and growing in size and requirements from a code perspective all along all the coasts now. You've got overhead and floor support, whether you're going to support these walls from the top or whether you're going to support it from the bottom, right? You've got to figure out, well, what kind of configuration do I want? Do I want multiple panels or hinged panels, or do I want individual panels? So how the operation is, and those all this stuff goes into the specification. And finally, kind of locking, right? Structure, force entry. A lot of times this is in residential spaces. Probably 80% of the exterior folding walls are in the residential arena, and about 20% in the commercial arena. But you got to know about those things. So all these things that all get put into the specification for an exterior wall, and a lot of times what happens is that they get brought into the interior space in the interior wall. So those characteristics. I want to go into the complexity of an exterior wall and why that may be a lot more costly, however, with an interior wall. So exterior, because you got to have thermal breaks, okay, you're going to be almost always using a thermally broken right frame because you can't transfer the thermal properties on the outside, whether it's going to be hot on the outside and cold on the inside, or cold on the outside and hot on the inside. You got to make sure that those that you have a thermal break there, and that's a way more expensive to create those thermal break frames with the polyamides between them than it is to do the non-thermal. And it also, right, makes it so you have to basically use an IG unit, an insulated glass unit. All of these things, all right, are more complicated and more costly. bottom line. All right. And so specifying external elements create a more costly internal option. And again, also when you're having to weep things out or trench them out or make sure that the water gets out, of course, you've got to have some way for those tracks, right? So the panel bottom of I'm showing here up against the track, the exterior, oftentimes you're going to have to put an embed, an entrench in here. And oftentimes, if it's on the exterior, you have to weep it out. I'm going to say a lot of times this is used, the bottom one that shows this trench is used in internal construction where you may not want to go with an AIA, ramped up um, um, floor mount, but you want to embed it into the concrete. And that, of course, when you're doing this, when you have to put a concrete embed or the installer has to cut that concrete out, it just becomes more costly as well. All right, so I'm just pointing those things out kind of differently. Whereas in interior wall, right, the performance criteria actually take on completely different performance requirements. All right, so typically you're going to be talking about, I got two rooms, I got people on both sides of these rooms, or noises on both sides of your room. We want to stop it. So the acoustical value of the system typically becomes the driving force in performance, not the weather resistance, air infiltration, structural loads. It's about acoustics. Okay. It's also then about glass type. All right. What kind of glass are you using to create the acoustics and the aesthetics that you're looking for? And frankly, structural loads of holding this up, which is also the consideration for interior. So you do have to worry about overhead loads and floor and or the floor support stuff, similar to your exterior. Of course, you got to worry about configuration and operation. Exterior configurations are a much less options there. Internal, the configuration options are, man, there's tons of them, dozens of different configurations that you can put together. Right. Of course, you're looking about sustainability, all right, and indoor air quality. Those two things are really important. And of course, there's a beauty in aesthetics that color, style, frame thicknesses, all these things go into play when you're dealing with interior wall systems. Not to say that exterior wall systems don't consider aesthetics. It's just when you're in an interior space, I think that is something in a commercial space that people are looking for. We're going to go through a number of each individually one of these specifically. Three of the sections have literally their own section that we're going to go through. And we'll just go through a couple of things real quick on these. Again, acoustics, dividing the space from one room to the other, keeping sound from going from one side to the other. And we'll get into that in full detail. All right, glass type. Like, are you going to use some kind of, some kind of various art glass, or whether you're going to use a safety glass? Those are really important, right? So you got essentially your three glass types that you're going to deal with, right? You're going to have annealed glass that when it breaks, it shatters, right? You're going to have tempered glass, which breaks in small pieces, and you have a laminated glass that is a safety. Now, these two tempered glass and laminated glass are safety glass, right, and can be spec'd as such. You want to have a tempered glass, you want to have a laminated glass, and oftentimes you can also say, I want tempered laminated glass. So if you break the glass, right, you have small pieces, but they're held up by the laminate in between, right, for a safety, for safety. Now, why is that important? All right, is a lot of schools use movable glass partitions. It's a design element that's been happening for the last probably 12, 15 years now. And when you have students, all right, and this could be in an office space as well, leaning up against glass, all right, and the rigors of having to, like, this is a middle school, all right, to be able to withstand some of the stuff that's in there, you're going to want to have safety glass in there. And oftentimes within the school, you're going to want to have a tempered laminated glass option so you don't if somebody does break something, it doesn't come down and stays in place. All right. And so that's why this is ultimately important. You can see this other school hallway where they have panels on both sides that make the corridor run here. Again, when students are going from one class to another class, you know that, when I grew up, all right, and went to school in the 70s, block hallways, right? All right, concrete block hallways is the hallway that we're walking down. So you have to make sure you've got these the safety elements in the glass specified properly in here. Again, you want to check into the overhead and floor support. Again, whether you're going to have it hanging from the floor with no tracks on the bottom, or you want to bring all that weight down so you don't have to have so much overhead structure. Those are the things that you have to be looking at in what product selections that you're going to do. When you have those things on the floor, you might have overhead support that's just a guide, like this system on the upper left. You might have one that actually runs in the floor between two different materials. And you might have one that actually is being supported by that bottom track. Okay. And so there's a guide track at the top and supported in the bottom. Right, these panels are being supported by carriers that are in the bottoms of these panels here. All right. And there's a lot of weight that's pulling over as you get those panels stacked in that sliding configuration. So this is what I was showing. The last photo is that these panels are actually being held up and the guide is at the top. All right. And the first one is that you have overhead structure. So you're going to hook into whatever overhead structure is above. You might put an I-beam there. You might put a glue lam there. You might put a number of different things, including a Unispan that QuikWall offers up as well. So these are the things you got to take into consideration. All right, now configuration and operation. I'm just throwing up a number of different kinds of things, right? And I could go through every one of these, right? You have fully auto single panels that run automatically when you push a button. You've got semi-auto single panels where you manually push them, but they have semi-automatic, right, seals that seal them in place. You have hinged panels that are hinged pairs. All right, so they have a center hung, but they just stack center hung in the middle. You've got single panels that have hinged doors that don't have a carry on it, so you can use it as an egress door that then stack away separately. You've got sliding telescopics, so you could push it one way, push it the other way, or come all the way across the room, just pulling, 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 pulling. Now, right, those can be right. Those have been out there in the marketplace for a long, long time from a glazer side of the business, but not overhead without any tracks on the floor. Okay, so that's kind of a new thing that's been happening over the last 5 years. Sliding, folding, big time. This is a direction that a lot of companies are moving to, is the sliding, folding, edge support system. You've got pivoting panels. Um, just heard from an architect yesterday that they love the concept of the pivoting panel, but this concept pivots and slides and stacks, and we'll show you that in a little bit. Continuously hinged center stack, where you have all the panels all hinged together, but they are continuously hinged. All right. When you're working with a supplier, all right, in general, whether it's QuikWall or it's somebody else, make sure, of course, that all these different stack configurations have layouts that you can go to, all right, both from a CAD perspective and from a Revit or BIM perspective. You can get all of this put together and should be able to get yep, I want this style and I want it stacked as we'll call a parallel on the lower right side, a parallel stack. All right. And I need some space. I got to be able to remote stack this a long way away, right? So we're here to help you do all of that and to be able to make sure that you get the right combination of what you need, all right, when you're making those designs. All right, real quick, going through the single center stack from a photo to take a look at what it is. This is a single panel, gets center stacked, very European style. Europe does not have Hong Kong, Southeast Asia, India, they don't really have paired panels. They use single panels with a single carrier in the middle, and that this isn't pivoting. There's not a pivot at the bottom. There's a normal seal. You just open this up and you push it all the way to the end. All right, very a nice option in the States where you just want to have one panel at a time, and it cleans up. You don't have any kind of hinging on the panel at all. All right. If you have a two carrier, multi-directional, so there's two carriers you can see in this stack of panels, and you bring those panels out individually, all right, as this video shows. So you have it in the stack, you got two carriers, you're able to move that individual panel and push it into place. All right, that's what an individual multi-carrier or two-carrier multi-directional panel is. All right. There are hinge panels. North America, lots of people decide to do hinge paired panels. And this is what it is. It's two paired panels hinged together, and you kind of set them up at the same time. Um, and can be a convenient way for you to set it up. But also you also have some issues with hinges being shown. Operations of two panels at a time can be heavy for some folks, etc. You have the sliding folding, extremely popular now, driven by the exterior glass wall suppliers, all right, but is becoming very, very popular from an interior standpoint. This is a continuously hinged system, all right, and so it's top supported, all right, and you can pull it out, and then have individual little locks that are in the floor, so little floor bolts, all right. However, the sliding folding systems, but super side stacking, very popular now. So as you're seeing, there's the systems are running on a carrier underneath on the floor, and it's guided at the top, and somebody's just pushing it, pulling it back out, pushing it. And again, you lock those individually down on the edge of the panel, pretty much with everybody's systems that have that type of in a style. Okay. I thought we'd show that model over again. He's such a good looking dude. We also have these pivoting doors, and this is what I just mentioned about this architect. Love the fact that you can just do a pivoting door to open up that space and then push that door back in. So just a quick 90-degree turn, it opens that space up, but then you can close that space off. What's really nice is that there's been some new developments that we can push it in. So we can make it still pivot, okay? We can have the pivot doors. What I'm going to show you is that that's kind of a day-to-day. Hey, I can open up this office, I can make it happen. And that's all those pivot doors are going along the left-hand side here. But ultimately, you can then say, well, a couple times a year, we really need to open up the space and have a big opening, right? And so we can unlock the carriers that are in the track above, and just let those panels stack off into the edge and open that space up. All right. Very unique type of product that we offer. And then there's also a telescopic offering. So these panels, hard to see because it's black on black, but the black rails overlay, and so you're just bringing those out. What's different is that it's overhead support. So you have multi-tracks at the top and don't have multi-tracks at the bottom. All right, and so those panels don't have a lot of tripping hazards or cleaning hazards down there. You see a lot of this stuff over the years, particularly into airports, and I'll show you why later on in the presentation. So the interior recap here is it's about acoustics, it's about glass type, it's about overhead support, configuration, operation, sustainability, and IAQ and aesthetics. And we'll get into those sustainability and IAQ in detail later and aesthetics. I do want to point this photo out if you want to see. This is a sliding folding system that is going to the left. All right, but then there's pivoting. They put two pivoting panels in. So ultimately, when it's closed, you can use this as an egress door. Okay, communication panel, we'll call it. But you can also use these as doors, so you don't have to push this all the way back if you're just going in and out, right? I thought that was a really nice combination of using multiple products to meet the criteria that this office space needed. Let's now talk about acoustics. All right. Um, that's that performance that we really need, and how that overhead structure, the floor support, the glass types, and the surrounding seals affect performance on the interior walls. All right. So that's our next learning objective. All right, so here we have the sound source on one side, and it goes through the wall, and it comes out on the receive side, and that is based on ASTM E90 testing. Okay, that's an actual ASTM E90, so everybody's comparing apples to apples on how they tested their product. And quite frankly, when you're talking glass partitions, you have three main factors that affect this acoustics testing. And having worked for a company for almost 30 years that owned an acoustical lab, I know how lots of things perform in these labs. And I'm going to tell you, the glass type is extremely critical for movable glass partitions. All right, the panel thickness, how actual thick the panel is, and then the seal systems that are around, because nothing helps acoustics better than having seal force, all right, within when you're setting up movable walls. Literally nothing in there helps better than that to get rid of any type of flanking path around the partitions. You're like, well, what kind of STCs do I spec, or what should we be looking at, or what's the ranges in movable walls? Well, the movable walls range in STCs kind of from 28, which is really, just kind of your normal door that goes into your office, up to like a 51 STC. Well, if you kind of see in this chart, you're talking about, 28, it stops sound, you feel it, but it's not, you have ambient sound that might have 30 dB in a room, or 40 dB in a room for that matter. So it's not going to be, that acoustically great. But when you get then up, all right, the acoustical ladder here, you're really in that sweet spot of in that 40 to 51 range. Okay, so the acoustical glass walls that are on the market from all the competitors, the current max right now is 51 STC, and then the other ones have estimated loads. But traditionally, these in an office space, you're going from a 43 to 51. Part of that is that, let's say you're in a school, that hallway photo that I showed earlier, that requires a 45 STC when you're looking at various codes for sound rules between a corridor and a classroom. So you got to have a 45, and so you're going to be in that 45 to 51 range, all right, in product selection. So it really depends on where you are. It's an office space. Yeah, 43s are great, no problem. But when you're getting into schools and in other places, you're going to need a little higher. So that 45 to 51 is the range to go at. The type of glass, all right, has an effect. All right, so if you're going with a single pane tempered half-inch glass, single pane is going to basically start at around 32, 35. All right. Typically it's around 32, and then you can put a small frame on it, an unframed operable wall. The single pane laminate, though, is you put a laminated glass in it, you're going to go up a couple points. All right. In my past history, I worked with a company that supplies laminates, acoustical laminates, and we actually tested those acoustical laminates on operable partitions in the lab, and it was about a two point increase across the board when we did our testing. Sealed, right, double glass IG units, right, achieve that 43 to 51, and it's based on various combinations of glass, right? So you can have laminate, right, glass, so forth in there, and you'll be able to achieve. And so, right, you'll see two pieces of sealed glass, right? When it's sealed to the frame, it doesn't have to be an IG, it doesn't have to be an insulated glass unit. You get great you get great acoustics. All right. Um, what also is extremely important for improved acoustics is actually the thickness of the airspace. So if you have a single piece of glass, all right, that maximum that glass might be able to get is 35 when it's completely sealed in place. And then you have a frame around it and flanking paths with sweep seals and so forth. It won't, it's going to perform at that 32 level. You're going to, right? Now you go up here and you do two pieces of glass, but to combine that glass is a quarter inch, it's a half inch, it's the same amount of quote glass, but you separate that and seal that in place, that airspace of 2.5 inches, okay, really drives, okay, acoustics. So you're going to go from like a 32, in this case, up to a 43 STC, 43, 44. And now you go from a panel that basically is 4.5 inches thick, and you got a much bigger airspace between the glass. The glass is still quarter, okay? And you go and you get that big airspace in there, and you get much better. And whoever works with and specifies demountable walls in office spaces understand that concept, right? It's the wider you get, the better acoustics. You can maintain the same level of glass. It's just get that airspace in there. It's the same thing with movable walls, right? And all right, here's a what we'll call a frameless system that you put a frame on, and you can improve the acoustics about 3-4 points just by putting this frame on this type of system. I just wanted to kind of show that, right, that you can get some good acoustics with a very small level of frame as well on there. So I talked about one of those factors that affect acoustics is the seals on the bottom of the panels. Okay, so this is what we're talking about. This seal that's going to be coming down in this panel, and this is a pass door panel, but this is the leg of it. So we want to make sure that that seal comes down onto the floor. When you're, whoops, sorry, I don't know how that happened. Um, when you're dealing with frameless systems, right, which we just showed, that frameless system, you're going to have a rail and you're going to have locking and you're going to have going down into a floor strike in the floor, right? Not going to have a ton of acoustics. There's no pressure, all right? Sound's going to go right underneath that sweep seal and so forth. It's really there for a space division and to have clear views into the room next door. You have another option is a manual automatic. Okay, so here's a system that has what we'll call a bayonet style seal. There's a couple manufacturers in North America that use this style of seal on their operable partitions. And so this thing sticks out, okay, and one of them has it sticking out from the front, another one has it sticking out from the back. But the same concept is to drive the seal into another seal to force the seal to come down. All right. And um, can anybody see the problems with that? Is that this thing gets damaged, right? Because you're banging them into each other, banging them into each other. And I'll just show you how this operates, okay, in this video. And all right, so these are paired panel ones. You can see that the bayonet seal is sticking out. This guy is pushing this panel close to the wall. He is pointing out one of the issues that you have when you have bayonet seals is that it does damage whatever you're running it into because you've got to slam that into the wall and push those seals down. Okay, and you saw the seal comes down, and then the next panel gets pushed into the next one and the next one, and so you're always hitting that seal on this end. All right, and so that's how that works. My recommendation is to not do it this style. All right, but some people will look at this word automatic and say, "Hey, I want an automatic manual seal," and they'll select that because it sounds great. There's a lot of long-term repair issues with this type of seal system. Okay. You can have manual bottoms and manual tops and bottoms, right? So here's the seal in up position, here's the seal in the bottom position, and you can move that seal on a manual basis. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of ways to do this. I'm going to just show you a multi-rotation video clip. All right, so you use a tool here on the left. You can use a tool to crank down seals that come down and up. Okay. And what I said about creating pressure, it's better to have both seals at the top and the bottom being able to create that pressure. So there's a worm drive inside of here that's driving this seal down. This particular video was taken early in the development of this type of seal. Right now, it takes about 3 rotations of a worm drive that we have currently to drive seals up and down, and it's not a multi-crank. Ultimately, operable walls have used this style of system, but it all runs on the edge of the panel, right? Because there's nothing in the middle of the panel. Typically, a solid operable partition has the drive system in the middle of the panel, whereas these are all being driven on rods that are turning inside of the edge of the panel. So, all right, and then you could have the electric semi-automatics, which means you're a manual operating panel, but there's power to power inside the panel, going inside the panel and connecting to the next panel that hits it. And so when it hits the next panel, the seals come down. So there's a quick little demonstration where you push the panel into the next panel, you see the connections, and then you see the seals automatically get driven down. So there's actuators inside the seal cavity or inside the panel cavity. You can see that up in here. They're inside there. Okay. And then as you drive on the bottom, there's one in the bottom and the top, and they get that electrical connection and they drive down. Um, um, that is what we've been providing over the last couple of years in the States from our product line. And then ultimately you can have fully automatic systems. Still have actuators that drive the seals when they get in place, but these panels move on their own, right? So you hit a button, and inside the panel, top portion of that panel, there's batteries and drive units that drive those panels. And when the panels extend and go out, those panels then move down. When they get into the stack position, they automatically go up and they charge their batteries from a top contact. All right. It's pretty kind of cool stuff. In order to make sure that the lab tests, which is the ASTM E90 test, is going to be as close as possible to the field test, you need to build surrounding conditions. All right. And so those surrounding conditions are ASTM E557. All right. So that is what you want to make sure that you build surrounding conditions. There's really 3 main points to it. One, when you build an operable partition, a glass operable partition, you need to have a header in the plenum, right? So you got to get up, right, and build to the deck so the sound doesn't go through. A lot of times in office spaces, hey, I want a 51 STC glass partition, and there's an open space in the plenum. You'll never stop the sound from going over the top of the system. The other thing is, right, you're going to put these things on carpets, and carpet leaks underneath the panels. All right. And so that's when I'm talking about seal pressure. You want a panel that pushes down those. If you are looking for solid acoustics, you want a panel that has a seal that pushes it down, or you put a dividing strip and make it a solid piece so those panels can, if it's a sweep seal or whatever, can contact against a hard surface, and that will reduce. And the third area is that when you put a panel in place, you want to make sure that there's bracing and insulation on the wall, the drywall here. Now you might be putting it up against concrete wall, right? And if you want really ultimate, you put a jamb, and behind the jamb, and I'm not showing it close up, but there's a break, all right, in that behind the jamb, there is a break that doesn't allow the sound to transmit through that, right? So that's when you're really looking for high-end field acoustics. So a quick recap of acoustics. Your glass type and panel thickness are key to movable wall glass acoustics. Sealed dual glaze systems provide highest levels of acoustics. Bottom seals provide pressure, both electric and manual, improve field performance, and make sure you design your surrounding constructions around E557. All right. Well, let's learn a little bit more about some of the sustainability elements that go into glass partitions. All right. Again, you should be worried about whether those have indoor air quality testing. And in particular, we have Indoor Advantage Gold. You want to make sure you have the very minimum HPD documents. So you have some, right, some uh, third-party review of how these things and the materials being used and any adhesive that are being used are evaluated. And then, of course, depending upon where your firm is in the cycle, whether you're using V4, V5, all right, living well, any of the things that are out there, just make sure that all right the systems are matching up to that, and the things that you need to. Common materials in almost all interior glass walls, they're almost always aluminum frames. They maybe have aluminum and some steel tracks. There might be a bit of steel inside for additional support of the aluminum on the frame, but the majority of the weight of the panel is in the glass. Okay. And then, of course, you've got the gasketing systems that are around to make those things acoustically sound. And the same with an exterior wall, you have to have the gas to keep the water from going, right? So you're not going to get away from, right? There's going to be some PVC on there, but it's such a small percentage of the overall weight in there. And oftentimes, when these systems are reclamated, you can just take those PVCs and handle those the way you need to. All right. Again, you can, oops, I don't know how that, there's a pole that popped up. All right. You can make these movable glass systems out of wood frames. All right. Yeah, which is also awesome. And you can use it out of polycarb as well. All right. And those are common materials. Of course, it's a daylighting, right? Operable glass partitions are best for bringing daylight into the interior spaces and giving you the ability to divide space, give you privacy, space division, acoustical separation, yet allows the sun and natural light to come into those and flow into those spaces. And we all know the benefits of having interior or exterior light and daylighting into interior spaces. We also can create diffused on here. And this particular one has laminates on the exterior, decals on the exterior that mimic fluted glass. So then how to and those are kind of the things that you're looking for from a sustainability side of things. Review how these glass partitions add to the human experience within the built environment. All right. So here's a quiet room that has glass operable partitions, and a couple of them are open, but they could open this space up, right? And this is going to be more kind of a picture show at this point of things that you can do, and hopefully you can be inspired a little bit. Again, you can create it individuals. You can put solid panels that you could marker boards, and then use individual glass panels to have it, or you could have the glass on the outside and the individual marker boards on the inside for an office space. Lots of different kinds of options, right? You can have them electric, you can have solid panels, you can have blinds, you can back paint the panels with any patterns. You can put muttons on the face or in the sealed units inside. You can put mullions, you can put pass doors, you can have pass doors if you're tall enough to have clear transoms above. You can do a whole bunch of different optional things. So here's one space that used decal on the inside, okay, and then also an inside pass door. Now I'm not a designer, don't play one on TV, but I would have picked black back painted on the outside of this to follow everything else, but that's not for me to, right? I just show the picture. One of the nice things that, because then I'll show you, we back paint the glass on this, but we can create marker boards with the back painted glass, the inserts. And so the system becomes very utilitarian. You can use it as a marker board and then wipe it off, and they can match the glass marker boards on the side. All right. And so our back painting equipment can allow us actually, if you need to, supply these as well in a project that can match that white and match that next to it. You can put mini blinds. Of course, somebody wants privacy. You can put mini blinds between the glass. As I was showing, you have in these systems here, you have panel to panel electrical current that's driven in the panel, so you can create a mini blind that can go up or it can close, open and close, up and down. You can obviously put a mullion in between if you need some additional height, or you're just looking to follow a design pattern in the rest of the room. You can put a mullion in the systems as well. Again, you can have it nice and open, big spaces, and you can close those spaces off. One of the things that we've seen a lot is I still want to get clear glass, but I want to have some privacy. When we're going to have meetings in here, we're going to be doing stuff inside those rooms. We want to have a little bit of privacy. A lot of times that privacy is where you're sitting down and you don't want to be distracted with what's going on, but you still want that clear, right? These glass walls are perfect for doing that. You can see that here. You can see that where they made a bigger space that's private, all right, and still are going to get the natural light that's coming in from the left-hand side of the room. Or I'm sorry, from the right-hand side of the room. All right. One of the aesthetic things that is really hitting the market right now, and we too are embracing this, is to have invisible hinges. So the hinges, when it's folded, are you can see, but then ultimately, as you fold it out, those hinges no longer are visible. Right. And so it makes it a really clean look. It actually mimics what you're looking at when a demountable glass wall. You don't have hinges sitting on the demountable glass. You can have a movable wall that kind of mimics the non-hinged of a demountable wall or office space glass wall. The other thing that you might want to consider is these are two different manufacturers, photos of two different manufacturers right here. But they both have trim and the glass sits inside of that trimmed edge. And this is right. One, you don't get as much fingerprinting, right, when you're moving the glass because you can hold the edge. But two, it protects the glass edge. So when you're like a school, all right, I would prefer kind of this style of panel that would be a trimmed edge, be more protective of that edge of that panel. All right. When you're in an office space, man, go crazy, like I'm going to show you. This is, all right, panel to panel where the glass goes almost to the edge. There's only a few millimeters of material that's holding the trim on the edge of the panels, holding that in. And you can see, even by the reflections, that it really is a lot of glass all the way to the edge. It's a completely different style than what has been provided into the marketplace up until this time. And here's a close-up of this. All right, this edge. And this edge, this actually is all the material, the aluminum that's on the edge. It's just this very little piece that's coming around the edge. And then it's back painted white. All right, and the interior frame is white as well, but it's back painted, and the glass is held in with a combination of glue and tape. All right, and so you have tape and glue, and why the back paint is that's there to hide how that piece of glass is actually glued into the frame. And it allows it so there's just a hairline of material between the two panels. Very, very sleek. And so when you look at that from the side, as this photo shows, it looks like you are just got a solid glass wall all the way across here. All right, very, very sleek looking design because you have so much glass to the outside edge. Yes, you still have a back painted glass that makes the vertical mullion look to it, but the vertical style look to it. But man, it is sleek looking stuff. Here's another one where it really is accentuated because this is on a curved radius. And so it just looks like it's just solid glass all the way around. And here's another view from that other side. You can see that there's, a vertical here, but it's very, very clean. The glass is a very, very clean look. all the way across. You can see that in this office as well. Very clean, solid glass looking from the edge. All right. And then the other one is the trimmed piece. Okay. And this is just an illustration that we use, but that's a trimmed edge. And you can see in the office, and I'll show you the reflection. You can see the reflection stops on that edge. So you can see that that's just a different design. It looks virtually the same, but it's a different design with a trimmed edge. Just give a little bit more protection. And obviously handling it, you're not probably going to create as many fingerprints on the edge of that panel. Another thing that I really want to point out, and it goes back to that Unispan that I talked about on the first slide of what we provide, is that there is a lot of places that you want to use glass partitions, particularly in malls, shopping areas, airports, that don't have overhead support. You may be going into a really old building that you're going to have to be like, how do I get that? How do I get overhead support there? And so in this particular project, all right, we animated this, but there is a Unispan in there, and that Unispan is up in that header, and that holds all the weight, takes these posts down to the ground all the way to that partition. That glass partition is on the ground through the end posts here, but we embed the end posts in the header up above. And so now you have this super clean look. All of that's there. And we're not tied into the overhead structure in any way, shape, or form. We bring this as a full, complete package. That is another one that is in the Dallas DFW airport. You can see the signs over here. But in basically all the retail storefronts, that this is the kind of glass movable walls that you see. And this, I'm going to guarantee you, gives you an experience much different than this. All right. People don't like traveling anyways, going through airports. Why the hell do they need to look at this, right? Hey, we're locking you out. You're going to steal our stuff, right? And you can do it this way, or you can go up, but either way, it feels like a cage. That's certainly not on brand with companies, right? And so this is a much better look and much better feel to be on brand, all right? And to be able to provide a much more inviting environment. I want to show you too, and I talked about this fully, and I apologize. This is a grainy video, but this is a fully automatic wall. So you just push a button, and the track and panel systems then move individually by themselves. All right, and there's two manufacturers in North America that can do this, and there's another manufacturer in Europe that provides this style of system. And but right, you can see because the panels have power to power, they can run those seals, top and bottom seals as well, as these panels are moving across and then stacking into their stack area. So I just wanted to show you that, if you've got a really high-end project, all right, you can have some really high-end stuff, and that even has a pass door in it. These panels are pretty amazing what they can do. And so there's a couple manufacturers that do this style of wall. We do a little different from one to the other, but we have it. Again, there we go. I warned you that there might be a dog bark today, which means my mail carrier is at our front door. So this is in a school, a lot of school movable glass these days, all right, and designing into schools. I'm going to show you, right, this is in a restaurant in a hotel in downtown Chicago. They can divide this restaurant, make it a private party on one side. You can do a lot of things, use lots of creativity with the glass. This is in a very large insurance company. And they have these 16-foot tall wood hinge paired panel glass walls, yeah, wood style. You can take a standard one and put a bunch of stuff on that glass, right? So you can actually mount decoration on the glass, all right? And if you see, this is kind of a cafeteria area, very a lot of uses, I should say, for cafeteria. Um, this is a pretty high-end restaurant that you might tell by the logo, but they have they close off their counters um, with movable glass partitions, and this is a polycarb with an edge on it. There's a hotel chain in the United States. There's 1,700 of these hotels that have a movable glass partition wall in them. I think this is a Hampton Inn, and Hilton has these movable glass walls in their specifications. Um, and again, using graphics applied, these can be really beautiful. Again, having direct light coming in, privacy when you use the graphics. Again, another cafeteria where you're using sliding folding systems, bi-parting coming from one end to the other end, floor supported. In the middle, then you have the doors being able to access one side to the other. All right, similar type of program here where you have a cafeteria style with using wood. I don't want to discount hospitality. Hospitality has been designing a lot of glass in. Here is a pre-function space, but has meeting rooms built into it. So you have standard opera walls over here, creating these meeting rooms, but you can let the natural light get in, all right, into that pre-function space, all right, and you can increase the pre-function space in a size. A lot of times, what I've seen is they also will put a curtain up. Yeah, but if you really want to spend some money, all right, you can spend some money and right use switch glass. All right, and so and this is a video within our engineering partners who work with us on our engineering stuff, and this is in their offices, and this is a switch glass wall that again you bring it out, and of course you all know that switch glass is working when it's clear. All right, so the laminates that are inside of here, once you get the power to them, right? So now when they close the door, that partition's hot, and in his right hand he clicks the button and it goes clear. So we can also provide that as an option to you if you ever really wanted to spend some cash. Again, this is just a use in churches. We've seen a lot of glass use in churches. Just gives a lot of flexibility, can open up narthexes and community centers and stuff like that. A lot of graphics. This happens to be in Seattle and at Microsoft, but they had artists come in and do graphic on this. It was pretty darn cool. Showing it. Here's in New York City. The Washington Bridge is right here. Looking out these windows. And then they can divide this long space into three separate spaces, three private areas to be meeting with clients that's looking over the Hudson. Very nice installation. You can also see the floor guide here, the floor support. It's not intrusive by any means, and it really looks sharp with this type of system. So another system in New York, but thank you for coming through the system. And does anybody have any questions? I know there's a format for it.
Hey Scott, we're actually like only have like less than a minute left, so I don't want to
Okay.
take up too many people's time. So what we'll do is we'll share the questions with you along with the emails, so that way you can
So we can
follow
answer back. Okay,
folks
great.
over email afterwards.
Got it.
So yeah, any final notes that you'd like to make before we wrap it up?
Again, I can't say thank you enough for coming out and investing your time here to learn a little bit about us. Again, you can get a hold of us, quickwall.com, and we can help you with any kind of designs that you're doing. So,
Wonderful. Yes, thank you
all right.
so much, Scott, for a really great presentation. So again, if you filled out that poll, folks, look out for an email from our team. We'll be connecting you with the QuikWall team. So you're welcome to respond to that email if you'd like to ask any questions or just communicate further. So yeah, thank you again, everyone. We hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thanks.